The hosts feel it would be a little unkind to present this podcast without just a word of friendly warning. We are about to unfold the story of Frankenstein, a man of science who sought to create a man after his own image without reckoning upon God. It is one of the strangest tales ever told. It deals with the two great mysteries of creation, life and death. I think it will thrill you. It may shock you. It might even horrify you. So if any of you feel that you do not care to subject your nerves to such a strain, now's your chance to. Well, we've warned you.
Hello, and welcome once again to the Frankencast. I'm the mad scientist, Anthony Bowman. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm joined as always by...
the alligator that's hiding in your cellar, that is Eric Velasquez. My pronouns are also he, him. Get a lot of use out of that alligator, huh?
Right. Such a... Why? Why is it an alligator?
The best part is it's literally just opening up like a pantry side door and just throwing everything in there for this thing to dispose of. Get some pigs, man.
And you know, it's totally just stock footage of alligator. Like, they did not shoot that alligator footage.
I think they did, because at the very end, I don't want to... Spoiler alert, there was the lab coat.
Right, okay, yeah.
So everything else, though, probably was stock, 100%. Or maybe even better, it was all stock, and they were just like, oh yeah, we just throw the doctor in there to use, because we have this footage of an alligator eating a lab coat for whatever reason.
Yeah, I would believe it.
Yeah, okay. So what are we talking about?
So yeah, we're talking about I Was a Teenage Frankenstein.
Wow. That's another oldie. What year was that?
This, I think predates the Hammer movies even. I believe, if I remember right, it was one of the first post-Universal Frankenstein movies.
Yeah, 1957.
Yeah. And of course, this was... Yeah, and that was the same year that I Was a Teenage Werewolf came out. The whole... this teens were the new sort of population of moviegoers. And I think it was I think the movie studios started catering to teenagers. It was this is when teens started getting their own cars and going to drive-ins and doing all of that. So they kind of became, this is rock and roll time. It's, the concept of it, I think the term teenager actually kind of came about roughly around it was a newer concept that there was something between childhood and adulthood. And so this is definitely, and it's been a while since I've seen Teenage Werewolf, but this definitely is about being a teenager. There's so much about the clash between teens and adults. Parents. We've watched a lot of goofy things lately, and it was kind of nice to be here's something that it's a cheesy movie, it's got bad special effects, but it's got a message, it's got something it's trying to do. It was kind of fun to get back into something a little smarter.
Yeah, not too much smarter, just a little bit.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So let's talk about our teenage Frankenstein, as it were, played by Gary Conway, a very young Gary Conway, who, if you're a big fan of cheesy fucking 80s movie, he was in Over the Top, he was a writer for Over the Top. Anthony, have you ever seen Over the Top?
I think so. It's been a long time, though.
Sylvester Stallone.
Okay.
Professional arm wrestling. And,
yes.
He's a trucker. It's amazingly cheesy.
Yes.
Also, apparently, he played the lion in American Ninja 2, if you're into that.
Okay.
So, I'm sure you know him from some other stuff, but it's mostly, older stuff. There's obviously nothing, well, I think he's passed on now, actually. So, no, Gary Conway's alive. He's just kind of retired. Okay.
Gotcha,
fair enough.
Okay.
Yeah.
He's both he's the monstrous version and attractive one later, right?
Yeah, he's both versions of the monster.
Gotcha.
And he's also Bob.
Right, of course, because Bob is the attractive monster, basically.
Exactly. He's the face of he's the face/head of the attractive monster. Yeah. But why no teenage Dracula?
Yeah, I mean, I guess just because Dracula is seen as eternal and is old or something. But yeah, I mean, like, we've been watching Hotel Transylvania. You can do a teenage Dracula. It's possible.
Yeah, I mean, I guess teenage Dracula is always attractive, though, which maybe I shouldn't say that. That's weird. Now that I'm thinking about it. Now I'm letting out my mouth. Nope, forget that. Because even though she's, like, it's like anime, right? They're 2,000 years old, but they look like they're 10. So, yeah, that's okay.
Yeah, I mean, based on the cosplay that you see around on the internet of Mavis, people don't
They're
mind.
Adults.
Yeah, so now we do have an actual teenage monster who is underage, but but before that we have a scientific lecture from a professor who we'll find is Professor Frankenstein. He's talking about, like, doing transplants.
Right, the far-off science fiction future of organ transplants. Which at the time I'm sure it was.
And specifically, like, they're talking about the, like, I think eyes were already happening and
corneas and stuff, yeah.
Yeah, and his theories were that you could even do limbs eventually, which, now that, they do I think hands are really the only, like, limbs that they're doing at this point.
Yeah, I read an article one time where a guy was going to try a head transplant, but I think they were pretty much like, yeah, we're not doing that.
But at this point, Frankenstein's like, this can definitely happen, and there's, like, somebody in the lecture who just, like, raises his hand and just, like, starts, like, heckling Frankenstein, basically.
Right. Dr. Randolph, I imagine. And he's even talking about, I wouldn't even allow my son to who's in school to swallow this bull. Or not, he doesn't say that, but...
Yeah, but so he's not having it, and Frankenstein's like, one day I'm going to prove my theories. Dead tissue can be reactivated, and then we just cut to, like, a little later, and we've got Frankenstein, and he's talking to another one of the doctors who was present at the lecture.
Yeah, the one guy trying to defend him.
Yeah, Dr. Carlton, who. I think they're just colleagues to start with, but he kind of, in this conversation, enlists him into his project, which is to prove that this is possible, basically.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't say he enlists him so much as blackmails him.
Yeah.
Because he is like, remember the other experiments we did? You're not exactly my, associate so much as my...
Accomplice.
Accomplice, yes, thank you.
Yeah, it's bizarre. Like, and they never say what or why. Like, it's just like they did something shady in the past, and now Carlton is kind of beholden to what Frankenstein wants to do.
Right. And of course we do get the mention that this Frankenstein had an ancestor who tried it, and they inspired Mary Shelley's book, as all good Frankensteins.
Right.
Should have that reference.
Yeah, and like he's like, my great grandfather or whatever, he created a monster, but I'm going to go a step further, and I'm going to use the concepts of selective breeding and eugenics. And I'm going to make a perfect person. It's not going to be a monster. And the trick that I think is going to make it work is, instead of digging up old dead bodies, I'm only going to use young parts. I'm going to find recently dead teens and use their parts so that they're less, aged and less in that sort of, like, decay process that that old people are in.
Okay, so this is a pattern in a lot of Frankenstein movies, where it's like the doctor has a theory, right? And this one specific type of person will cause this will cause just because of who they are will cause it to work this time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's so amazing. Like, with Frankenhooker, they had to be female, right? Or femme presenting, or, assigned to
yeah, they had to have estrogen because that was his bonding agent or whatever.
Right, and even in Herbert West, the Reanimator series, we got to get newer. Okay, we already have newer. Now drugs.
Yeah. We got to murder someone on the table and then instantly re-inject that. Yeah. But, of course, this one being the teenage movie and kind of focusing on youth and everything, then
so is
obviously
it possible that this is where it started? or is it just, that's lazy shorthand? Am I looking into it too much? You let me know.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely, like, I think they chose to do the young stuff because they were wanting to do this sort of, like, teenage angle. So Frankenstein's theory has to fit in with the movie's concept here.
Right.
And then we get the Car Crash Ex Machina. Like, as they're discussing, we need dead teens. two carloads full of teens crash head on to each other right in Frankenstein's front yard, basically.
Yeah, it's amazing. And like even there's a guy giving exposition waiting for them.
Yeah, like they hear the crash and they run outside and the guy's like, yeah, I just saw it. Two whole full carloads. Like they were jam-packed with teens. All teens in there and they're all dead.
Right. We got this one kid who was ejected and I think his face was messed up. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and Frankenstein's like, oh, that's perfect. If the cars are burning up, we can go steal the one ejected kid, and no one's going to miss him because they'll think he just burned up in the cars. And so, yeah, then we just have them dragging this corpse into the house. You know, Frankenstein tells Carlton to investigate, like inspect the body and see what's going on. And he's just like, he's dead. And he's like, well, yeah, no shit, he's dead. But like, why is he dead? I need specifics. You know, we're gonna cure the dead part, but we need to, like the details.
Right, you're a doctor. Do your damn job. Come up with an assessment.
Yeah.
And I like how Carlton's like, oh, it's fucking cold in here. It's like as cold as Morgan. And Frankenstein's like, yeah, that's what this is.
Yeah. Yeah, you're hanging out in a morgue, dude. Like,
yeah, come on.
But yeah, so then Carlton's like, yeah, so the skull's crushed, the face is like damaged to like unrecognizability, there's possible brain injury, and Frankenstein's like, I can fix all that. That's fine. Yeah. No big deal.
Right. This Frankenstein's very cavalier about it. He looks at, like, Carlton's a little squeamish, and then Frankenstein comes in and looks at it and is like, I've seen worse.
Yeah, we can handle this.
Yeah.
And then we just cut to, like, later on that evening, Frankenstein and Carlton go to a party that's sort of like Frankenstein has traveled to America from England and is
worst English accent ever. Like, no attempt at one.
None at all.
No.
But he's been doing this, like, extended lecture series, and it's, like, just finished. So they're kind of having, like, a goodbye party, and he's supposed to be going home sometime soon. But I don't know how long he's been in America, but, like, you know, he has a whole lab with a morgue built in and everything. Like,
right.
Theoretically, he's been there a while.
Yeah, or maybe this is a place that just rents out to scientists, especially mad ones. But we also get to meet Margaret, who's his nurse assistant.
And, like, you know, he's like, I'm going to miss you. And she's like, as a nurse? And he's like, no, as a friend. And she's like, well, I want to be more than a friend. Like, I'm in love with you. And he's like, well, you know, I'm going to be leaving soon. But, you know, they kind of, like, they have a nice sort of flirtation where, like, you know, she's like, I've been kind of pursuing you this whole time. And he's like, well, right. Kind of enjoyed being pursued.
Oh, then he busts out the sexism. That wonderful sexism that we know these old movies for. The whole... It is it is in all creatures of nature, the females are the one that pursue the males. There are many birds that disagree with you, good sir. Like, and many other animals too, which is, yeah.
Yeah, and, like, he's like, well, you know, since you've kind of pursued me, like, maybe you want to join me in my experiments. But then he's like, not to help with the experiment. I just need somebody to, like, answer phones,
right,
and keep people from bothering. I need a secretary, not a nurse.
Right.
But if that works out, then once I finish the experiment, maybe we can get married and I can drag you back to England.
Right. He's baited her, right? He's recruited her because she was such a good assistant. And, you know, now that she's caught feelings, he's like, yeah, I'm stringing you along. Sure, why not?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So then a little later, we've got the doctors again inspecting the corpse. And Frankenstein, this is one of the things that I thought was really interesting in this movie. I've not really seen in other Frankenstein stories. He revives the damaged, injured corpse and wants to perform the repairs as, like, surgical procedures on an alive person instead of, you know, stitching together all the dead body parts and then reviving a whole being.
Well, his reason is shitty.
Yeah, he wants it to feel pain so that he'll be grateful to Frankenstein for saving him.
Yeah, and not feeling so much pain anymore.
Yeah, that's, you know, it's just manipulative, it's fucked up, like, it's cruel, which, you know,
like,
I mean...
This is the low-key most manipulative Frankenstein, I think. Like low-key, though.
Yeah, it's like he's not, like, you know, we had, like, Peter Cushing Frankenstein, who would just, like, in certain movies be just, like, awful, but it was like he's playing like a supervillain and he's supposed to be, but, like, this guy is I think this is the teenage thing. He's playing an adult of the age, and that is villainous in and of itself. Like, I think he's being a typical man who has outdated views on women, has outdated views on young people. It is kind of cold and callous because men during that time had that tendency because they'd been raised into that, and
Well, not only that, but they probably a lot of them have undiagnosed PTSD and weren't willing to show it. So
from various wars. Yeah, and so I think that's kind of the message of this movie is, like, we're supposed to look at Dr. Frankenstein and be like, this guy thinks he has it all figured out, but he's, in the grand scheme of things, he's a dinosaur. We want the new blood, these teenagers, they're going to grow up and have, like, a better outlook on the world and life.
Oh, if only.
Right, yeah.
With hindsight.
Yeah, I feel like every, like, older generation has that where they're like, maybe this, and I feel the same way. I'm like, maybe Gen Z is really going to fucking fix things.
Right. Well, yeah, I mean, even at us, like, we've got so much credit for destroying bullshit, the millennials. And it's like, well, we didn't really try that hard. Mostly it was you guys just not giving us money that destroyed those.
Yeah.
So thanks, I guess.
Right. So they go, like, when Frankenstein says all this stuff about, like, yeah, we're gonna, revive this corpse and it'll be, suffering. Carlton's like, are you sure that's the best plan? And he's like, yeah, this is gonna work. So they get right to work. They revive him, and, like, you see that it's awake, but, like, is basically comatose because its head is completely just destroyed.
More or less, yeah.
And so then they start with, like, legs, right? Like, they're adding some parts.
They remove one leg that's completely destroyed and both of the hands because they just don't work.
Yeah, and Carlton's like, what are we going to do with this? We can't, like, bury this stuff. If we try to burn it, there's still going to be bones.
Frankenstein has a plan for it. The best plan.
Our aforementioned alligator.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's just like it's a cabinet on the wall, and he just slides a door, and there's just like a moat or something. There's just like a water.
Right. Where do you just have a moat in your base cellar? Like, he had to put that in there, right? Well, it also has to be climate controlled for this thing. And you're leaving this poor animal in the dark in a presumably small room. What the hell?
Yeah, it's just awful.
Yeah.
But, it works. He throws the parts in there, and the alligator takes care of them.
Yeah. Well, if only we had a few more parts, then we could complete our creature. Oh, hey, what's in this newspaper? Oh, a bunch of boys just died in a plane crash, you say?
A bunch of star athletes with able bodies and muscular legs and hands?
Yep. Sounds like a shopping trip to me.
Yeah. So then it just cuts to them at the funeral home, stealing parts, and they're like, so we got some good wrestler hands, those are gonna have some, like, nice strong grip, and we got a football player leg because he's, like, good with running and dodging.
But just one. We can't have both of them. We can't have a matching pair.
Yeah, which is like, why not just replace the other, like, he's gonna have, like, one bulky ass leg, and it's like the Frankenstein girl from Hotel Transylvania with the one big muscly arm.
Right, but just a muscly leg.
Yeah. And so, yeah, they're all excited, and so then it just, like, cuts to, like, later on that evening, the whole household is eating dinner together. So it's, it's Frankenstein, Carlton, and Margaret, and she's real sulky and kind of, like, passive aggressive because, Frankenstein spending all his time on his work. He's ignoring her. She feels neglected.
Well, he's got a cure for that.
Yeah,
let's go on a drive. Let's do something you want to do.
Yeah, so we're going to take some time to ourselves. At first he's like, we can talk and, think, and it'll just be nice. So they drive around a little bit, and then they're like, hey, we could pull over. This is a nice little spot to pull over. And then it turns out that that's, like, the Makeout Point. Like, all the teens are pulled over all along.
Right, like, all of them. There's a line of cars that they're like, hey, let's just act like teens and make out here.
Yeah, and it's cute. She's like, we could do what the teens do. And then it just, like, fades to black as, like, they're getting up to something.
Yeah.
We fade back in on the next day, and Frankenstein is talking to the creature, who is, like, kind of awake, but he's like, speak to me, and it's like
a dog. Speak, dog.
And his head is all, like, bandaged up, where you got, like, a mouth hole and one eye hole, but not two.
Because the other one he hasn't put it in yet.
Right. And so he's trying to get him to talk, and it's the creature's not responding, so he zaps him with electricity to like jolt him into action.
Right, that'll get the blood flowing, right?
Yeah. And finally he's able to get him to repeat good morning. And then suddenly the creature's like, hell, it's dark. I'm trapped in the dark. And Frankenstein's like, yeah, get used to it.
Right, pretty
You're gonna be in dark for a while.
It's gonna be a while before you see the light.
Yeah, just so cold, just completely unfeeling.
Yep, I gotta get that new eye for you, kid.
Yeah. And then, in fact, so he says that, and then the creature starts crying. Like,
right, and instead of empathizing with him, he's like, great, the tear ducts work!
Right. I didn't even think I had that figured out. Awesome.
Yeah.
Just awful.
Right. It's like a feature for this kid's suffering.
A little later, Frankenstein's working in his study. I think he's like transcribing his notes from earlier. And Margaret peeks in. She wants to talk about wedding plans.
Yeah.
And
well, Frank ain't got no time for that.
Yeah, and he's just like a jerk to her. Like, again, this is, the way he's treating women is just terrible. Like, it's that, like, you're interrupting my work. My work's important. I don't have time for your frivolous woman nonsense.
Right, jeez. And she's like, all right, well, fine. I'll figure out what you're doing if you're not going to tell me. And he goes off. He actually loses his cool, I think, for one of the only times in this movie. And he just slaps her.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because she says something along the lines of, like, I have ways of figuring out what you're working on.
Right. He's like, what ways? Tell me now.
Yeah. But it's like he slaps her and, like, you can see, like, she's kind of shocked. And this is, like, noir movies just happened, like, 10, 12 years ago before this. And that was, like, a common thing then. Like, if there's a woman who's, like, hysterical or, like, overly emotional, we'll slap her, it'll calm her down, and then we can move forward with the story. But here, like, you can tell this is a bad thing he's done. Like, the movie is not, like, saying it's acceptable.
No, right. No, it is not saying, oh, he stabbed her out of her hysterics. It's absolutely, no, this guy's an abusive asshole.
Yeah. And, like, yeah, you can see, like, the shock on her face, like, that this has just happened to her. And then he sees it, and he immediately moves into, like, love bomb mode, where he's like, oh, I'm so sorry. It's what abusive people do, like, you do the abuse, and then you, like, apologize for it and make things right, and calm them down and get them back under your control.
Yeah, you got to understand, you made me crazy.
Mm-hmm, exactly. And he's like, I just need 72 uninterrupted hours, and the experiments will be finished, and then everything will be okay again.
Yeah, it'll be back to how it was and all that.
Yeah.
That was a great thing.
Right. But first, Frankenstein and Carlton need to go leave and make some purchases. They're going to be out of the house for a while. And so as soon as they leave, Margaret goes into spy mode and, like, gets an impression of the keyhole.
Yeah, so she, like, gets putty and somehow makes an impression of the key. I'm like, this is dubious even for that time.
Yeah.
I don't feel that's how that worked at all.
Yeah, like, if you have the key, you can get a copy. But yeah, she somehow, like, jams stuff in the keyhole, and that makes...
Right.
But yeah, so she goes to a locksmith, gets a key made, sneaks inside, sees the lab, and is like, I don't see anything. And then she starts pulling open more drawers.
Which, okay, bad play to her. Like, you see a morgue, it's like, shit. It's like, I'm not messing with this. I'm going away now.
Yeah, there can be nothing good in those drawers. Mm-hmm. And sure enough, she opens the one that the creature is in. He, like, pops up.
Yeah, she finds a jump scare.
Yeah. He screams, she screams, she slams the door back shut, just, like, throws him back in the dark, and runs out. And then that's it. Then a little later, Frankenstein's gotten back home and is working with the creation again and demanding that it call him Sir, because he's an old-fashioned man, and that's what you do.
You're going to show me respect, young man.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then he has him start quoting Bible verses, and that's where he's learning to read and recite and speak is of course Bible verses.
Yeah, you got to get that religious trauma in there early, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And he also tells him to start exercising his hands. And at first it's just kind of like open and close your hands, just kind of like squeeze them. And he's like, soon I'll get you some like heavier exercise equipment as you build up a little bit of strength.
Oh yeah, and then we'll work out that one really strong leg as well.
single solitary leg day.
Right.
I think then it's just like a little later we see Frankenstein come back into the room, and now the creature is lifting weights. So like a little bit of time's passed. He's exercised. He's built up some strength. And Frankenstein's like, I'm really, I'm proud of your progress and your obedience. This is exactly what I wanted for you. And the creature's like, but I'm really unhappy. Like,
can I go hang out with people now?
Yeah. Like, I'm miserable. I'm just stuck in this dark basement all the time exercising. You've given me nothing to want to live for.
Right. Well, of course, Frankenstein isn't happy to hear about his creation's unhappiness. So he says, all right, you want to know why you can't go out? I'll show you why you can't go out. And he cuts off the bandages. He's like, look at your face.
And yeah, of course, the face is monstrous. It's still
the
damaged.
Toxic Avenger, basically.
Yeah, it's got one like big bug eye, and the other one's kind of like mostly closed or gone.
Yeah.
It's like it's a big paper mache head. Like it doesn't look great, but it works. It's fine.
Yeah. I'm sure for the time it was terrifying.
Yeah. So then Frankenstein like shows, again, we get our mirror scene, and he shows him his damaged face and is like, that's why you can't go out, because no one's going to accept you like that. So I don't even have to lock you up in here. You're a prisoner by your own appearance.
Right. And speaking of that, I'm just going to leave now and leave the door unlocked.
Right. I'm not going to lock you up just to show you how much I know you're stuck.
Well, the kid being a kid is not going to take that. So the creation does end up walking around the house. It finds a nice little chair, nice little cozy chair, sits down, plays with a flower or something like that.
Yeah.
Oh, no, that's
Yeah, he just like I think he like touches a piano and like hits the keys and kind of surprises himself.
Yeah.
It's just like, he's only existed in that single room in the basement, and now like he's seeing parts of the world and everything's a little new and strange and scary.
Right. Well, what does this door lead out to, Anthony? Oh, it leads out to a bunch of car noises with no cars.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, it's like definitely they're just on like a backlot street, and the cars are all right off. It's that like it's me and my friends off camera who are laughing at this funny joke I told.
Right.
It's just just car sound effects. And then he like I guess kind of walks along. We don't really see. It's just like he's outside, and then we just see through a window. There's a very attractive young lady in like kind of a slip kind of negligee sort of nightgown.
Very erotic for the time.
Yeah. And of course the creature sees her and is kind of watching her get ready for bed. She's like brushing her hair and all that. And then
He's staring pretty hard.
Yeah, he's got that one giant eye, so he's really staring.
Taking it all in, man.
And then she sees him and, obviously gets scared and screams.
As you would, seeing a strange man/creature right outside your bedroom window.
Yeah, while you're like half dressed and everything.
What this guy has? He has the best and most sensible reaction. He just busts in through the fucking window instead of just walking off.
Yeah, he just does a Jason Voorhees, smashes through the window, and tries to quiet her down. And when Frankenstein monsters try to quiet people, those people end up dead.
They're tending the rabbits, George. Yeah.
Yep. But instead of leaving out the window, he like leaves through her front door, and like I guess she lives in some sort of like boarding house or apartment or something. Yeah, because there's like suddenly a bunch of people in the halls who see the monster run out, and it's it's not just like her mom and dad or something. It's a bunch of just kind of random strangers. So
presumably she's an adult that just lives here by herself.
Yeah. Then we just cut to the police have arrived and they're talking to all these neighbors. It's one of those witness things where like everybody has contradictory witness testimony.
Right. He was giant. No, he was really short, but he was stocky. No, he's kind of thin, but buff.
But the only thing everybody can agree on is his face was super fucked up.
Don't you love the 50s/early 60s?
Yeah. So they're like, okay, I guess we'll, look
into the guy who got fucked up face. I don't know. Right. Which also, I love this period in time where a lot of the commentary, this is like right as the seduction of the innocence bullshit is kicking off, where cops are still incompetent. But, in a few years that would obviously change, and now they know what they're doing. It's not like ACAB.
Right. Yeah. So then we just cut back to the house. Frankenstein is reading the paper again, and newspapers in this are just exposition dumps.
Papers, yeah.
Yeah. And so he sees that a person with a damaged face attacked and killed a woman last night, and he knows what's up. So he goes downstairs and talks to the creature and is like, I know what you did, and now you really can't leave the house, because if anybody sees you, they're going to know you're a killer, and you're going to be in trouble.
Right. Just to spite you, I'm not going to give you that new face I promised.
Yeah. And he's like, if you don't start cooperating more, I might even just destroy you altogether. And then he goes back upstairs, and there's a knock at the door. It's the police, and they're just, they're going house to house because this woman's death was, nearby. They're just seeing if anybody saw anything suspicious out of the ordinary, anybody with a damaged face, perhaps.
Yeah. And Frank's like, no, I don't know anybody like that, but I'll keep an eye out.
Yeah, and then it's a little later, he's walking around the house, and he goes into a room, and Margaret's there with a jewelry salesman, and she's like, oh great, I was hoping you'd come in. I need some help selecting wedding rings.
Oh yeah, and Frank's pissed about that. He's like, what the fuck are you doing? Well, it doesn't say that exactly, but he's like, what are you doing? What is this guy doing here? And she does explain, oh, he's just the jeweler. And Frank's like, get him out of the house.
Yeah, he's not having it at all. He's just leave. He's yelling at the guy, and he's like, perhaps another time. And he's like, no other time. Just get out of the house, take your stuff and go.
Right. I don't like people in my house.
Yeah. And so once he's gone, he continues to shout at Margaret, and she's like, maybe you didn't want him in the house because you were afraid he might see the monster that you have hiding in the basement that I know is there.
How do you know about that?
Yeah. And she's like, I'm a resourceful woman. I assumed that you wanted someone who could meet you on your own level. You didn't want a puppet, right? And of course, yes, he did want a puppet.
Yeah.
He did not want a resourceful, smart woman. But he's he kind of sees that he's got to back down here a little bit. He's like, yeah, I'm sorry. And so she's like, it's fine. I know you got a monster, but I love you, and I want to help you with your experiment and protect your secrets. And he's like, okay, time for some love bombing again. Here's a check. Go back to the jeweler and buy whatever you want. It's a blank check.
Yeah. As my sign of trust. Well, also, the fact that you figured this out has brought us together, and clearly that's the best thing for both of us. Run, Margaret. Run now.
Yeah. This is some definite trauma bonding nonsense. So yeah, she leaves, and then she goes to buy the rings, and then back down in the lab, Frankenstein is talking to the creature, and he's like, all right, I'm going to give you your new face, but first,
one condition.
Yeah, I've got something I need help with. There's this woman in my employee who I think she's going to ruin everything, and if she
going to kill you.
Yeah, it's going to everything, if she lets people know what's gone on, yeah, you're gone. The experiment's ruined, everything's over. So I need your help, and I've got a plan. Yeah.
So we know what's up.
Yeah, he doesn't we don't even need to spell it out. They just cut away after he says he has a plan. And now Margaret has gotten back home. She's showing off her ring.
She loves it so much. It's the first thing she looks at when she wakes up, and the last thing she looks at when she goes to sleep. Oh, poor Margaret.
Yeah.
You deserve better.
Yeah. And Frankenstein's like, well, I know you said you wanted to be more active in my experiment, so why don't you come downstairs and help me? It's time to feed my creation.
Yeah, Carlton can't help me feed him now. He's gone somewhere.
Yeah, and you can tell she's like, oh yeah, I can do that, but you can see that she's just like, oh, I'm scared of this I saw him before. He's scary. So she's a little nervous, but agrees to go down there. She's got to look tough and competent. That's what she's trying to portray to Frankenstein.
Right, but she's equal to him, not just subservient.
Exactly. So apparently, Frankenstein mostly just feeds the creature through injections of vitamins or something. He's not actually eating. So she's a nurse, so this is right up her alley. So he has her help with the injections, and then he's like, oh, while you finish that one, I'm gonna go, there's another thing I need to get. I'll be right back.
It's just outside this door here.
Yeah. So as soon as he steps out of the room, the creature is like, "You hurt me when you injected me," and she's like, "No, it's it's just a little needle, but it's it has to be done." And he's like, "No, you want to kill me."
Right.
And she's like, "No, I don't. I don't have any interest in killing you. Like, I want to help you." And then he attacks her, and then she kind of like turns away, and the door slams shut.
Well, the doctor slams the door shut basically in her face.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So. Her last moments, she knows that Frankenstein has betrayed her.
Asshole.
Yeah. And we get the rest of this scene on Frankenstein's side of the door, and he's just standing there completely cold as we just hear her screaming and dying through the door.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Margaret, you did deserve better.
Yeah. And then the next thing we see is Frankenstein dumping something into the gator pit, which we can assume is Margaret.
Right, and of course he's also admiring this fancy new ring he paid for.
Right. Yeah. And so then he's talking to the creature, and he's like, "How about we go for a little drive? Maybe you can pick out a new face." No. That's kind of like a running thing that we see a lot, or it's not super common, but like
shopping for body parts.
Yeah, the monster specifically getting to choose either his own parts or the parts for his bride or whatever. We get a lot of that. And so then they're driving along, and Frankenstein's kind of like monologuing about his grand achievement and that he can't wait to show his creation to the world. And eventually they arrive back at Makeout Point, because if you're going to look for a handsome teen face, where better?
Where are you going to go? Lover's Lane. That's
yeah.
Right.
So they're kind of walking around, and Frankenstein's like, "What do you think about that guy?" And the monster's like, yeah, that one works for me. Yeah. So they attack the car. I think they just kind of like knock the girl out.
Yeah, they scare her and somehow knock her out. Well, no, they don't even really knock her out. They just scare her. She screams. And oh no, he does choke her out. You're right. He does choke her and knock her out.
Yeah, and then I think it just like cuts to back in the lab, and there's just a decapitated head in like a cage sitting on a table. And it's like so obviously one of those deals where like they've cut a hole in a table and a guy's sticking his head through the table. Yeah. Which, it looks better than when you try to make a fake head that looks all janky. So I guess in this particular scene they've got the actor, the Bob actor, under the table, and somebody else being the creature for a moment or something.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't think we really even see the creature's face exactly, and also it's a mask, so who's gonna know, right?
Yeah. Cut to like the home of the girl who had been making out with Bob.
And it turns out she made it home somehow.
Yeah, but she's so like shaken up that like she's like I guess asleep or kind of trying to like deal with it in her room, and so her mom is kind of like secondhand passing along what she heard from her daughter to the police. And considering that they just had a young woman murdered like a couple of days ago, the cops are like, this was probably a teen prank. Like Bob's probably going to show back up, and like they probably were trying. Yeah, they were. Him and his friends probably were trying to scare your daughter, and it went a little too far.
It's not like we've had a rash of teens just dying.
Right. So they're kind of like talking to her or whatever, and they're just like, we'll look into it, but don't hold your breath. It's going to be fine. And then as they're getting ready to walk out, they're like, oh, is this picture of your daughter and a boy? Is this the missing boy, Bob? And she's like, yeah. And they're like, we're gonna take this. It might help us ID him if we come across him.
Right. And then of course that fades to the monster looking at itself in a mirror.
Mm-hmm. Now with that Bob exact face. Yeah. Carlton arrives back with his newly purchased equipment at that point, and it's like he's got all this equipment that like the creature's done at this point. They don't really. It's pretty obvious that Frankenstein was like, "Hey, can you go buy this equipment while I kill Margaret?"
My wife or my fiance, yeah.
So they're like drinking a toast, and
he also has another plan for this equipment, or at least the boxes of the equipment.
Oh right, yeah. That does he talk? There's like a couple of things going on because like at first.
He doesn't say it right now.
Yeah, because they drink a toast, and I was like, he's going to poison Carlton, but he doesn't.
But he does mock America's love of sweet wine, which, I mean, I don't know if that's true anymore, but...
And I thought that was even leaning into it, that like, oh, we're using some really sweet wine to cover up the poison.
Yeah.
But Carlton's like, where's the housekeeper? I didn't see her around. And he's
I sent her off. She didn't fall in no alligator pit. No.
Yeah, I'm getting ready to move back to England, so I decided to go ahead and cut her loose. And he's like, oh yeah, that makes sense. But where's Margaret? I don't see her either.
Oh, she left me a Dear John letter. She said she didn't want to be with me because I ignored her.
Yeah, I'm so sad. She just dumped me. I was so unexpected.
Yeah. He's the worst.
Yeah. So they kind of like talk about, how women are. They're just so, they're so flighty. Like she wasn't getting all the attention she demanded, so she just moved on.
The worst.
And so he's like, well, but the good news is, while you were gone, I was able to get a new face for our creation. Why don't you come take a look?
Yeah.
And yeah, Carlton is very impressed. He's like, wow, where did you get that? And he's like, don't worry about where I got it. Just look, it's just so good, right? Like, we did such a good job.
Right, he is a handsome boy.
And the whole time he's just looking, the creature's just looking at himself in a mirror. Like, he's just obsessed with his own face.
Right. But then we get the reveal for the rest of the equipment. And that Frank's like, yeah, he's too busy looking at himself. Tell you what we're going to do. We're going to, how we put them together? We're going to take them apart that exact same way.
Right. Because it'd be way too hard to try to get false passports to get him into England. So, yeah, we'll just, in all of the crates, we'll just put false bottoms, we'll put various body parts underneath the equipment, and we'll ship it all. And it should be a cakewalk. When we get back to England, we'll just put them back together, wake him back up, it'll be fine.
That just shows you the level of monstrosity that this Frankenstein has. Like, casually, I'll just fucking kill a guy and tear him up and put it back together.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. It's my creation. I'm not concerned about his sentience. It's whatever I want to do. Like, he's like, but I'm going to need your help. Why don't you... We'll tell him that it's time to remove the stitches around his face, because he's going to want that so that he'll finally be perfect.
Yeah.
And so...
then you'll OD him on, sodium pentothal?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
So they start to strap him down to the table, and instantly he's like, "No," he knows something's up. Like, why do you need to strap me down just to pull out a couple threads?
Yeah. That hurts, but not that bad.
Yeah. So he breaks free, starts attacking. He ends up grabbing Frankenstein and chucking him into the alligator pit.
Yeah. Well, he chokes him to death first, but yeah. Then he's like, "I'll throw you in the alligator pit."
Yeah. And meanwhile, Carlton gets away in the chaos and then almost immediately returns with a bunch of cops. They pull their guns and try to get this angry teen monster to calm down and stop. And he ends up
get away from that giant bank of transformers and other forms of electrical generating equipment.
Yeah, and this is, we've seen this exact death many times. He falls backwards, crashes into the electrical equipment, gets shocked, and dies.
Well, hey, he electrocutes the shit out of himself so much and so harshly that the rest of the movie's in color. Did you notice that?
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah, and, Carl's like, it's almost like the whole thing was like a flashback, and now it's like, Carl, he's like, I'll never forget his face after the accident.
Which is fucking weird.
Yeah. He was like... Yeah, he's talking about his monstrous face, not the face at the end of the movie. Like, I don't know why he'd never forget that, like what it has to do with the story.
Right. It's like, that was a messed up face. Yep, sure was.
Yep. And then we just get a close-up of the monster face. I think the mask, I don't think it's even on anybody. Yeah. It's just a really close zoom of this scary monster. And then we just
cut to the gator eating a lab coat, an abrupt ending.
yeah. Credits roll over, this gator eating him.
What a interesting movie. No, I mean it is. It's pretty good, and Frankenstein is at his most monstrous here, at least pretty close to it.
Yeah, it's like I feel like it's definitely a movie that, talking about the Alice Cooper Teenage Frankenstein song, the idea of teens feeling monstrous is common. Like, that's why there's also the werewolf one, because
puberty and all that.
You grow hair unexpectedly, and you feel like you got weird feelings that you didn't before. Like this metaphor, is a pretty easy leap to make. And so, also when you are a teen, suddenly your face changes. You start getting acne. You look weird, and it takes a while to come into your own and start to feel normal and happy with the way you look again. And that's definitely a big part of this, but there's also the whole thing of like, I think that, the alligator is kind of nonsense.
Right.
But it also, there is, like, I think you can read into it that, like, Frankenstein is kind of like a dinosaur. Like, he's like the last, or like the end of this, like, dying breed.
Dinosaur being eaten by a dinosaur, effectively.
Yeah. I mean, alligators have been around forever, and, it's kind of the same thing. Like, Frankenstein has kind of reached the end of his usefulness in, like, the evolutionary scale, and, like, alligators are kind of the tail end of, like, the dinosaur trajectory.
Okay. I mean, I dig it. I respect it.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I might be reading a little too much into it, but I think that, like, it makes sense. So, and the fact that, the metaphor of the teen thing and everything, like, that's definitely there. So this movie's not, like, it's not below the standard of, like, being able to rise to having some thoughtful metaphors.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even going back to the monster is the son of this other monster, effectively.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah. Pretty good.
Yeah.
Also
like,
pretty short.
Yeah, it's like an hour and 10 or 12 minutes long.
Yeah.
It's and our original Universal movies were pretty short too, so it feels like I mean, and probably I would bet that this movie ran and drive-in double features. Yeah. And those movies tended to be shorter because you wanted, like, two movies and a short feature in between, or a short subject. And
so we had I Was a Teenage Werewolf and I Was a Teenage Frankenstein.
Yeah, I bet. I'd be shocked if they didn't run together at some point.
Yeah.
Which, of course, this was, like, the monster thing kind of, like, revived when the original Universal Dracula and Frankenstein kind of, like, went back into theaters and drive-ins. So I think that this kind of was inspired by that, and then kind of kickstarted monsters being, like, in the in popular culture again,
right.
Ultimately leading to Hammer and everything beyond that. But it's funny that these kind of, like, slight movies that probably is not as many people are familiar with, I think that they had a big impact in the fact that monster movies continued on.
Yeah, at least the creature features as they were.
Yeah, absolutely.
That and nuclear energy kind of becoming the important thing at the time.
Right. Yeah. That's the other thing going on at the same time, is all of the them and stuff, all the giant monsters.
Right. And also going back to the divergence between, like, the type of horror with the atomic bomb, with, like, the American version, it was creating both superheroes and monsters, whereas in other parts of the world, namely Japan, it was just creating forces of nature that destroyed everything.
Yeah, because they knew the consequences in a way that we did not. With the distance of geography and not the 24-hour news cycle we have now. Like, America saw some images of the bombing, but, like, not the way that we would today if that happened.
It was easier to turn a blind eye.
Yeah.
Rough. Well, now that we've started our back to school special with that, where else can we go? Like, do you think we could learn some lessons, Anthony? Maybe some lessons on how to make a monster?
Yeah. So How to Make a Monster. So I had seen I Was a Teenage Frankenstein before. I don't think I've seen How to Make a Monster, but it's considered a sort of sequel to I Was a Teenage Frankenstein. I'm not sure exactly how, so I'm very interested to check that out. I know that they're made by the same company. They're both short movies. They probably double featured together at some point. But yeah, they're in some way tied to each other. So I'm excited to see what that looks like.
Did you know there was another movie entitled How to Make a Monster made in 2001? So,
I'll have to look into that. I'd imagine it may be, when you're talking about making monsters, it's likely to be Frankenstein related.
I mean, almost certainly, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Have to check into that one.
We'll have to check that. Well, Anthony, where can they find us now?
So you can find us on all the socials at The Frankencast. You can email us at thefrankencast@gmail.com. You can also find us over on YouTube. And most importantly, you can find us over at patreon.com/thefrankencast, where we're now offering free trials of 1 week where you can jump in, subscribe, check out whatever you want, and then decide if you want to stick around or not.
Yeah. I endorse it. I'm just saying. No.
Yeah, I mean, there's I think 50 plus episodes at this point. So there's a lot of material that, you know, if you're just listening to the main feed, you're missing out on. We think it's good stuff. A lot of
shenanigans we go into.
Yeah. It's definitely, we think it's worth your time. And, you know, now you can find out for sure on your own without paying a cent to us. So, you know, check it out. And if you like it, it's like $5 a month and you can stick around. But if not, that's okay too.
Yeah, you can make it out scot-free with just a few episodes under your belt.
Yeah.
Yeah, all right. Well, anything we got to say?
I think that's it.
All right, well, in that case, to be continued.
Looks like you survived another episode. The Frankencast is a production of FCR Media. It's hosted by Anthony Bowman and Eric Velasquez. Follow us on Twitter at The Frankencast, or send us a letter at thefrankencast@gmail.com. Our cover art is by Amanda Keller. You can find her at Keller Illustrations on Instagram. Our theme music is by Vivek Abhishek. Thanks for listening.
In 3, 2, 1, let's jam again.
Hello and welcome once again to the Frankencast.
We're doing the whole intro?
I guess we don't need to. I think that should all... you got your side, so I didn't lose my recording, so...
Yeah. You want to save that real quick, though?